over the past several months, the Xi Jinping regime has rolled out a tool that is very corrupt in the centralized government, vastly implicating to not just the Chinese people but the world as a model, and will allow for almost robot-like control over the masses. It's the Chinese Citizen Trust Score, and China has rolled it out for its 1.4 billion citizens. Actually, that 1.3 is not accurate due to all the undocumented people that are either here illegal or were born here illegal. Think one-child policy. And it is something right out of a George Orwell novel, 1984, on steroids. And the social credit system is going to be fully rolled out to all citizens, mandatory by 2020. Why should this matter to you? Well, because it's a system that is intended to be implemented for you at home in your country. In my next video, I'll show you the documentation that proves this, that was written decades ago. And the social credit score allows you to, among other things, be able to travel, get loans for money, get jobs, enter into certain schools. Who can you trust? This technology is called big data, and it's basically been designed by the West, implemented by China as a test ground. How a person's rating can be calculated on its national trust score. Well, it looks at a number of different dimensions of a person's life. If you pay your bills on time for your mortgage, your purchasing patterns, things you say on social media, whether those things confirm that it is truth or not, or whether it has anything to do with the government or not, it doesn't matter. And it has an algorithm that, of course, again, I'll show you the technologies that were designed by the West primarily, and then now implemented in China for this purpose, to create a score, much like a credit score. And this behavior score allows the government to know who's a good communist and who's a bad communist, okay? The lemmings are being farmed out. Anybody gets off the plantation and they will be punished. The way they're doing it, though, is very concerning, because they're using high-tech means to give human beings a rating without ever taking into consideration the factors in the score. Now, the justification for the government, they say it's both economic and social, but in actuality it is a centralized power structure that will put the final nail in the coffin for any dissent against Xi Jinping's dictatorship. Now, let's take a look at the 3-digit score for this system. And it weighs people by their social score. That has to do much like a credit score, and that is your value in life. Now, China, especially in the past couple of years, has been doing so many wireless payment types, such as Alipay and digital WeChat payments from Tencent and other companies like even Apple Pay are participating here, that actually $5.5 trillion equivalent in transactions are going through their digital payment system, which again is all tied into their social score. In contrast, in the United States, they're only doing in the billions. So you can see how this thing has been amped up as far as, you know, being tied to the farm and being basically almost chipped, even better than chipped, because if you're doing all of these digital payments, and there's the 5.5 trillion in mobile payments made each year in China, and basically it's about saving face too, because what they'll do, and what they've been starting to do before with their own credit rating agencies and with their state-controlled press, is that they'll publish your social score. And that way you'll lose face in the eyes of all of your colleagues, your family and friends, and so on. So losing face is a big deal here, as you know. And that may be more of the control mechanism than even the score being low itself. Now, What is really disturbing to this approach is that because China has a kangaroo court system, and because there really isn't much of a social pushback, dissidents are put on house arrest, imprisoned forever, executed, or whatnot. But the social credit for business creation also is key. Involvement of private companies that are actually reporting on their employees for this social score. It's so over the top and unbelievable that I wonder to myself, when is there going to be a pushback? Because even in the days of Caesar didn't become Caesar overnight. It took years of totalitarian action and political workings behind the scene in order for Caesar to gain that much power. When's the pushback going to come? I mean, I know that basically the human rights violations are very deep and getting increasingly severe. You're going to want to read this article. I'm going to put it in the comments section. That she eliminated most of his political rivals, and they are either fired from their positions, on house arrest, jailed, or some of them executed. And so this is just a way really for the central authority to get rid of any remaining dissidents and to keep the lemmings in control so that this neo-feudalism model stays in place long term, and the peasants remain the peasants perpetually over generations. The social credit system blacklists citizens, and here's an example right here. This is a woman that got blacklisted, and she had no means to actually appeal the decision because, like I said, it's a kangaroo court system, and no lawyer is going to take up that battle for you, and have any expectations of winning. Not to mention the fact that people don't really have a lot of money to spend on lawyers' fees, right? And so their voices are being muted. And here's an example right here of her mobile device, which shows a ticket and an order has been filed against her and banned from getting first-class seats on high-speed trains because of this social credit violation. This is something that is even being rolled out for foreigners in China. And you can be blacklisted here. You can be blacklisted unjustly. And any appeal process is futile, really, because once you're out of the country, it takes a significant amount of time, money, and effort to be able to get off that blacklist. You might as well just burn your passport. The social credit system has put a lot of pressure on the younger generation. And it can be traced back to the 4th century BC. And that's when really the trustworthiness of people and their financial credit worthiness were measured. And you can go back even to way back in the tally stick days, where somebody's social scores are kept in plain view on a tally stick, or in another means, yuan bao here, or seashells, or whatever, or other means of having a trust system controlled by the central authority for people that are going to do business, people that are going to pay their taxes and do as the central authority says. So reaping rewards for good deeds. Now what they're giving out basically is like chits, or giving out like meager drippings for the poor here, the peasants, by getting free gym passes, cheaper public transportation tickets, shorter wait times at hospitals, travel in public service areas, and access to government-only areas with an online verification system that links to their social media accounts. Now, this is huge, because if it's mandatory to have a smart device, mandatory to have these social media accounts to be linked up to this by force, that's something that's unprecedented, and this is what's really worrying here, is they'll post your infractions, they'll post your social scores and embarrass you, much the same way that a guy will post his bounced check or his counterfeit money at the pizza place back in the day. Now, this credit score system, like I said, is being considered and praised by the elites to be rolled out into Western countries. So pushback gauge is a key here. How are the Chinese going to try to deal with this? Are they going to grow any balls and voice their concern? Marriage-wise, here's another media for mass control here. Marriages and weddings are a very big deal in China, obviously. Now, in China, women are allowed to marry at age 20 and men at 22. Okay, you're not allowed to get a marriage license before that time, which leads you to wonder, how do you gauge a person's readiness to be married in their own personal life? You know, this is the Chinese government going into the bedroom and regulating what you do in your personal life to the 1/1,000,000th degree. Now, this also goes for childbearing too, is that the reason why people follow this and they get married at a certain age and they can only have children after that age and get married, because otherwise they won't get a hukou. They won't get the birth certificate papers and the hukou for their municipality so that the children can go to school, because without that hukou you can't go to school. Without that proof of identification and proof that you're not a bastard, so to speak, you can't get these special type of privileges that a true citizen gets. And this is how they're linking it also to their social credit system. It is also through marriage, hukou, and child bearing. This leads me to wonder, how are all these illegals in China going to be able to get on this system? If and I know a lot of people here, a lot of people have told me this, that they're the second or third born of a family that's only supposed to have one children, because of the fact that because of one child policy, what they had to do was they had to get married, have more than one kid, and the second and third kid had to get fake hukous and fake ID cards to be able to get a job and go to school and things of that nature. Well, if this system goes into place 2020 full bore with big data from the West, and that means we're talking petabytes of information cross-reference on a global information storage capacity network. Companies such as IBM and EMC Dell are huge in this. Okay, think databases too. Think SAP. Think IBM and Microsoft's offerings. Think Oracle. These are the technologies that they are using to be able to cross-reference all this information. And they're doing it quite effectively, and I don't see any pushback from the people. There's no way for them to organize anyway in social media because all that's controlled. This is very concerning, and I'm going to try to give you some of this information from decades ago that the elites have published in plain view on how this is a dream come true. If you listen to what the Rockefellers have said over the decades, they said that the Chinese model is a dream come true for them, a dream come true for the elite, the ruling class, because it gives them total control and power over life and death, total control over everything. It's far beyond being chipped. So that's it in a nutshell. You should pay attention to this. You should understand that it's moving at such a fast pace here since I was here last that it's almost hard to imagine why there hasn't been any significant pushback.